With God, all things are possible. We've heard the phrase, if you spent any length of time around Christians or in churches or in Bible studies. You've probably seen it on the little Bible verse of the day calendars. Makes for a great Facebook post. Makes for decent bumper stickers. Makes for really good coffee cup theology. But what does it mean? The author of the phrase actually had an intent when he spoke it. It comes from Matthew chapter 19. Jesus approached by the rich young ruler who asked the question, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus answers, "Keep the commandments." The rich young ruler, which ones? He would have been familiar with 600 plus commandments found within the Torah. We're more familiar with the 10 commandments. And all of those commandments are dependent and trace back to two commandments that Jesus describes elsewhere. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, thy mind, thy soul, and thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. On these two hang all the law and the prophets. So to ask the question, which one, kind of boils down to what's the minimum that I have to do in order to earn God's favor? What's the one commandment? Like, we know they're all important, but what's the one that's actually important? Well, Jesus kind of begins to give him a little bit of a list. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit adultery, honor thy father and mother, love thy neighbor as thyself. And the man begins to get excited, and he answers, all these have I kept from my youth up. What lack I yet? I've done those things, and not only have I done those things, I've never broken those laws. So surely I'm almost there. I'm almost winning this. And Jesus looks at him and says, well, one thing you lack. Sell everything you have. I need you to prove the first commandment. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. See, the man was very confident in his ability to love his neighbor as himself. He looks around and he says, well, I've honored my parents. I haven't killed anyone. I haven't stolen. I haven't committed adultery. I've got this. But Jesus says, you missed the first one. And he explains this to his disciples a little while later with, if you're not willing to forsake your family, your lands, your property, your house, all of these things that this rich young ruler held in high regard, you're not going to win. He basically calls his bluff on the very first commandment, that you look good on the outside. You're the religious fundamentalist of the religious fundamentalists. You've kept the law from your youth up, except you haven't, because you have another God. Your property, your things that you own are your God. Now that's the backdrop to with God all things are possible, because this man walks away very sorrowful. He's disappointed in the answer. Jesus didn't give him the magic bullet checklist that he needed to be able to accomplish eternal life. And the disciples are sitting there listening to the exchange, and they begin to get a little bit disappointed. And Jesus turns to them, and he begins to interact with the disciples. The rich young ruler is gone. And one of the questions that the disciples ask is, well, who then can be saved? You see, Peter, James, and John, fishermen. Matthew was a tax collector. These were not the religious of the religious. These were not the well-learned men that you would expect to see teaching in the temple. These were your ragtag, blue-collar sort of men. And they look at this religious elite, this man who prided himself in keeping the law, this man who prided himself in loving his neighbor. And they begin to compare themselves to him. And they begin to ask the question, this man cannot stack up to God's standards. And we don't stack up to his standards. So who then can be saved? If he can't do it, we certainly can't. And if he can't do it, who can? Well, Jesus answers. With men, this is impossible. But with God, all things are possible. See, that first is the phrase is not that your life is bad and you could use a boost and it's okay because with God all things are possible. It's not a, how am I going to make my car payment this month? Money's coming up short. Well, it's okay because with God all things are possible. Well, Jesus is dealing with far greater, weightier things. We're dealing with eternal life. That was the question that the man asked. What must I do to inherit eternal life? And with man, nothing. This religious of the religious, this elite law follower, this outward lover of God, couldn't do it. And so if he can't, who can? And that's the point. That with man, it's impossible. You can't. There's no checklist, no law that you'll be able to follow to be able to earn God's favor into eternal life. That's the point Jesus drives home over the next verses and into the next chapter. You can't do it. But with God, all things are possible. See, it's not by works, lest any man should boast. It's by the grace of God that you are saved. And so while it may make for some really nifty sort of coffee cup theology, the words of Jesus carry a little bit more weight than just, you have a problem, but it's okay, God can fix it. You do have a problem, but it's a far worse problem than you think it is. Because God loved the world so much that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. See, whosoever believeth not is condemned. That's your problem. It's not that you're a good person and you just need to be cleaned up a little bit. You're following all of the love thy neighbor rules and you just need that one more law in order to earn God's favor. No. Whosoever believeth not is condemned already. But whosoever believeth in the name of the only begotten Son can inherit eternal life. With man, it's impossible. But with God, all things are possible.